Yeah, for us in analytics, I mean, we have to be able to tell the stories of our impact that we're having in the organization. Obviously, we sometimes need to get budget or resources. And so how do we do that? How do we convince people to invest in us or our teams? How do we get them to take action? And so a good example, I was at a customer event several years ago, and I sat down at a table for lunch with a bunch of other customers, and one of the gentlemen that sat down at the table was a senior analyst, and I mentioned to him that I was presenting at a local conference on data storytelling, and he mentioned to me, oh wow, I didn't really believe in data storytelling until recently. And then he shared with me an example of where he observed two analytics managers. Okay, so there's one analytics manager who, I don't know, he was trying to introduce some initiative, or maybe he needs some technology, or he was introducing a new program, and he needed a relatively smaller investment, maybe six figures, right? So maybe $100,000, 200,000, I'm not sure. He didn't say exactly, but it was a smaller six-figure investment that he needed from his superiors. And then there was another analytics manager, and he needed a seven-figure investment. So it may have been $1 million, $2 million of investment for whatever initiative that he had. And what this analyst noticed, that one of these analysts, the one with the smaller dollar amount, didn't tell a data story, whereas the other manager who needed a bigger amount of investment actually did tell a story around his needs and his requirements. And so the interesting thing the analyst saw was that the guy who told the story got his funding. The one who didn't tell a story was still waiting to get funding for his project. And so that taught him a valuable lesson that, yeah, we need to tell data, we need to use data, we need to tell stories with it. And that's what's going to drive decisions, and that's what's going to help us to be successful. So the same thing applies. You know, if we're working in analytics, obviously we're trying to help other groups to make decisions and tell data stories, but then ourselves, even us, we need to tell data stories about what we're, the value that we're contributing to the organization. If we have initiatives or projects or programs that we're trying to get funding or resources or staffing for, we're going to do that by telling data stories. I'm hoping that statistics becomes more of an emphasis in education systems for elementary school students and high school students. One of the, I don't know if this is the way in Brazil, but here in the US and in Canada, I'm originally from Canada, I think a lot of the focus has been on calculus, and calculus is basically at the top of the pyramid. And there's a great TED Talk that was done. I'm forgetting the name of the TED Talk speaker, but he talked about how right now our education system puts calculus as the pinnacle of our education. And that really prepares people for engineering, right? But if we look at statistics it can be used by everybody. It's not just limited to engineers and people who go into a STEM kind of focus. If we were able to teach students more about statistics, I think we would be doing more to help them be better prepared, not only for business, but also for life, and just understanding, probabilities and, all of the statistical concepts that can really help us to make better and smarter decisions, not only in our roles and careers, but also as family providers and owning homes and making smart decisions with our money. So I see the future is, I'm hoping that we can see more of maybe a transition away from calculus being the pinnacle of the education training for math, and maybe more of a shift to statistics. And then obviously a lot of us have graduated from college and university, and maybe we have some exposure to statistics, but it's been a while. It's been many years. And so I see, I published a Forbes, I'm also a Forbes contributor. And so probably about 5 years ago, I published an article on closing the gap, the data literacy gap that I saw. And I think that gap's still there. And I think companies have to kind of step in. They have to provide data literacy training and programs so they can help maybe not just the analysts and the data scientists to use data effectively, but actually just the general workers and middle management, people who are increasingly getting bombarded with a lot of data and maybe don't know how to interpret it correctly. And that's something that I've done. I've built out a whole course about how to interpret data, because I teach on data storytelling, but I've since found some companies are interested in, well, what about the audiences? What if they don't know how to interpret the numbers in their dashboard or in the data story? Do you have anything to help them? And so I've started to train different organizations on data interpretation, which I think is a key skill that a lot of business people will need.